Over the past 10 years, climate change has affected how farmers grow their crops and their production size. Some countries, like China, have a very high pollution rate because of all the factories, and so they sometimes have acid rain. That rain could get into the plants that we eat and be very toxic if we ingest them. For some people, climate change is just a headline that gets views, but for others, it is a whole movement that we need to take action now or it will be too late. I happen to be one of those people that believes we need to start taking action now because if we put it off for any later, then later will have been too late to reverse any of the damages that we could have stopped now. According to Concern Worldwide, climate change is a threat multiplier for hungry and undernourished people. Combined with conflict, it destroys livelihoods, drives displacement, widens inequalities, and undermines sustainable development, including our goal of zero hunger by 2030. If we keep going the way we're going right now, by 2050, there are going to be a lot more people and villages that go hungry because their crops and agriculture just can't take all the changing weather. Now that people are starting to realize that climate change is a bigger problem than the media is letting on, they're trying to fix it and not have irreversible consequences. For example, the Arctic is getting warmer, which results in the ice caps melting. Ice cap melting means more water in the oceans, and some small islands are losing their homes. In India, they have a normal flood season, but now with more water, the flood season isn't just one season, it is starting to flood the crops that they need for eating and living. Since the 1700s, the CO2 levels have risen by 45%. Having that much in the air is bad, but having a lot is even worse and toxic for our food. The United States still has a long way to go in reducing their CO2 emissions. With the help of everyone, we can bring down the reduction. In my interview, I talk with my dad, who is a farmer at Large Farm and Gardens, to talk about his views on climate change and how it's affecting vital crops and their supply. Can we see today how much has changed in the crop supply in the past 10 years?
You know, I think what we see as far as the crop supply goes is that there's a wider diversity of items available from a wider area of nations. So that means that there's a demand and people are using all of their land. Other nations are using all their land to feed that demand. In direct correlation with climate change, I don't see the impact right away, but in the next 10 years, I think we're going to begin to see that.
Could there potentially be harmful chemicals in our food that we don't know about?
Yes, there are chemicals that are harmful that we do not know about and ones we do know about. You know, from the pesticides that we spray so we can have perfect produce, even organic farms that are farming conventionally, organically, there are chemicals that in high doses are not good for the environment. They may be okay for us, but then it trickles down into our water. There are chemicals that we use for fertilizers, and there's chemicals that we put into seeds and our crops so we don't have weeds. You have to be careful what you grow. You have to be careful what you eat. You know, they say wash produce and things like that, but what are you washing the water with? You know, what's in the water that you're washing with? So, yeah, is there a trade-off to the abundance of food and what we're wanting? Yes, so be careful. There are chemicals.
If we don't start fixing this now, how could there be a bigger impact later on in life?
Well, I think exponentially, as we begin to see the loss of our natural areas due to deforestation in nations that are just catching up to us, like South America and Southern Africa and even parts of Northern Africa. So they're beginning to see what we saw 20 years ago, they're seeing now. In the immediate, as we look into the future, I think there's a huge impact. The economic disparity of those nations that have the capability to buy from other countries that aren't using the same environmental concerns, and the impact of our health systems being overburdened with different foods that we are overproducing and maybe overindulging in. So I think we're beginning to see that as a direct concern of how we eat. And then I think how it affects us and relates to climate change is, I think we're going to begin to see more highly processed foods, so there's a lower impact, and also more plant-based foods.